And our guests have asked that the following video be played first. So I'm about to do that. And there it is, and let us begin. I'm recording, right? Yes.
In my early 30s, raising our family, we were working, and I have a daughter, and she was in junior high at that point, and we were worrying about soccer practice, and we were worrying about making a living and taking care of the things at home. And you see it as, well, I voted, that's about as far as I need to take it, and what's the use? It takes me 10 minutes. I may or may not think through issues before I even walk into the voting booth, but I did my part. Move on your way and get back to life.
Politics and government seems like just dirty business to people, and they think it's so big and so complicated and so unwieldy that there's no way that they could possibly understand it. When you get into it, it's not that hard to figure out.
I grew up in a very liberal household in Southern California. Really didn't get a lot of the understanding of the way things were supposed to work. You'd hear a flippant comment every once in a while about, well, somebody ought to do something about that.
It was more of a slow process for me to understand that I needed to be more involved. When you just vote, you don't really understand how many opportunities there are to be involved as a citizen.
Our generation wants to be left alone, yet they don't realize that government does not have the solutions for them. It will not continue to give you free stuff that's really not free. What it's going to do is control you and give you parameters around your life. And that's not at all what our generation wants. We don't want anyone telling us what to do.
Enough is enough. I've got to do something. I've got to get involved.
I'm fascinated by how few people know the national motto, E+. What does that mean? It means from the many, from the people who've come here, whatever color you are, whatever language you speak, whatever race, whatever religion, we are one people. And what makes us one people? It is a belief in the idea of America. America's an idea. It's the only country in the world that is an idea. We believe in that idea.
For thousands of years, a king or a potentate or a pope would rule over the people.
A monarch that you had to go to get permission to start a business or get approval on your marriage, and that wasn't the case here.
America was different. It was exceptional because for the first time in human history, people realized the rights of the individual.
We have created this idea that individuals are special. Every single person matters. All of us individually inherently know what's best for ourselves and not government.
And you have the ability to make your life what you want it to be. It's not up to somebody else. It shouldn't be up to somebody else. It's in your hands.
People all over the world thought it was insane that the ordinary man simply couldn't govern himself. We didn't need the government to do every last thing, to tell us what to do and where to go and how to do it. That was the magic of the United States Declaration of Independence and its Constitution. The Declaration of Independence is the idea of America. The Constitution is the rule book, how it works, how government needs to be set up.
The Constitution protects the Declaration of Independence.
The document that tells government, you are in charge of something this big, and the Constitution restrains the government to being that small.
There has never been a set of documents that allows the opportunity for the human being to be freer, to have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness as ours do.
Liberty is the responsible exercise of freedom.
I get to do with my life what I choose to do with my life.
And as long as I'm not harming somebody with my choices, I expect my choices not to be infringed upon.
Freedom is a messy business. You might not like what the other guy does with his freedom, He might decide to have a different religion than I think is the one true religion. Okay, I just need to be okay with that. We need to thicken our skin up a little bit if somebody is doing something with their liberty that we don't think we should do with our liberty.
And government cannot take those rights away. They're protected, they're enshrined in our founding documents, but they must be enshrined in our hearts. It is something that government doesn't give us, that we have naturally, nature gives us, or God gives us. Government will take away anything in its search for power, in its overreach. Only we can protect those unalienable rights that are born to every human being on the planet, and that we need to understand and defend. We have slowly devolved into a dependent society where we do want government to take care of us. We do want government to feed us, to clothe us, to house us, to give us money if we can't find a job, to support us if we're ill, to support us if we're old. That's an insidious thing, because as we want government to do those things, we lose our abilities to be responsible for ourselves. And it starts with the little encroachments. Look at what government has taken control now.
Every decision you make, every action you take within a given day, there is some level of government involvement in that decision.
You look at the cereal box, that nutrition label is government mandated. You might be interested, you might not be. You might be interested in different nutrition information.
They now have put regulations on what kind of toilets you have to have in your bathroom. I mean, you can see that in your own household.
And it might be little things, or it might be we're raising taxes, so now the money that you earned, you get less of that because the government's taking part of it.
I got a notice in the mail, and it said that the government of the town wanted me to make an appointment so their agents could come into my house and see if I had built anything that they could tax. I am protected from having the government come into my home without probable cause that I am a criminal, or without a warrant from a judge.
To me, this is mind-boggling. And that's why costs continue to go up, especially in the regulatory state, is there's so much that people are trying to protect people from. I mean, I don't know how you would keep up with the regulatory state and how you keep up with every law when there's thousands done every year. Nobody knows all those.
So it's from the little things that government imposes on us with regulations that lead to the loss of this great American experiment in liberty. And that's why it is so important that we understand the call to citizenship and our pride in it, that we consider it the most wonderful thing that we possess is our citizenship, standing up to protect our unique form of government.
I think that we owe it to ourselves and the future generations to be very active and engaged citizens and tell government this far and no further.
We've abdicated that personal responsibility to bureaucrats, to our elected officials, and we should be holding those folks accountable.
So if you're unhappy with what's going on in your local school, you're unhappy with what homework your kid comes home with, that is beholden on you, not someone else, not the school district, you as an individual to get upset enough to go to your school, to talk about it in your community, to be able to bring change. So if anyone wants to see change in what's going on in their government, they're gonna have to get rallied up and do something about it.
The government was created by the people, and we are the ones who pay them. They don't produce anything. The only money they have is from what private citizens produce.
Is government performing what you're paying them to perform? Probably not.
You wouldn't hire, let's say, a babysitter for your children and just be like, do whatever you want. You know, you're gonna put rules in place, have them eat dinner at this time, have them go to bed at this time. And so it is our right to restrict them where we think they're straying, and to fight back when we think that they're going too far. It is our right. We are technically their boss.
No country has ever been conceived in liberty as ours has. And that through inactivity, through inaction, through not caring. We are allowing this amazing experiment to become extinct. And we are on the cusp of being able to save it like an endangered species or letting it go forever in this world. We must stand up for freedom and say, all those lives that have been lost in the past, all the wars that we have fought, all the effort that has gone into creating these documents, we cannot lose it. We cannot be the generation that lets it go. Not on our watch.
You don't have to go to Washington, D.C. to make a big impression or to change the world. You can do it locally. You can do it in your own neighborhood, whether it's an HOA or in your town. Find a service organization and get involved in the fabric of your community.
You absolutely can walk in and do it. I'm a stay-at-home mom. I'm not a constitutional expert, but I do know a lot of it is just showing up, finding that cause that you are concerned about, and just seeing what it is that you can do.
I never had the feeling there's nothing I could do.
Look through the lens of liberty. Look through it. Look at any change you might like to make and say, does this make us as individuals freer or less free? People are doing it. I am so excited about the number of people today who are suddenly realizing that yes, I can make things happen. I can make a difference.
Let's trust ourselves and let's trust our neighbors to fix problems instead of always saying there ought to be a law or the government should fix this. This is up to us.
If I don't do something, one thing, every day, once a week, once a month, things aren't going to change.
Washington's not going to correct itself. It's time for us to step up and use all the tools at our disposal and take the government back.
There's opportunities at every turn. If you don't get involved, it's going to be decided for you.
It's like the bald eagle. You know, the time came when it was endangered, where we were going to lose our national symbol. And people stopped and said, we cannot allow this to happen. And now they're bald eagles everywhere. They have come back with great force. We can do that. This is the moment when we can take it back. If Americans will stand up and say, I am a citizen, I am not going to allow a line in the sand. Freedom does not begin in the White House. It begins in your house.
Well, I think that deserves a round of applause.
Is there a YouTube link that we're going to see to that?
I will make sure that we get that up there.
Who is that? Her name was Lady Helen?
Helen Griebel from the Griebel Foundation.
How do I spell it? K-R-I?
Yeah, I-E-B-L-A. It's the Vernon K. Griebel Foundation.
Okay, it's get this up. It's my pleasure to introduce 5 participants, speakers today. We're all going to participate, but these are the people who are going to guide us in their presentations and questions. I'm going to hand this over to Stephanie. Yes, I got that. Let me turn this camera towards Stephanie. And Stephanie will be our moderator for the duration. And Stephanie, it's my pleasure to hand the reins over to you.
Thank you, and thank you for having us today. We're thrilled to be here. Obviously, I wasn't in that video. I was kind of sitting off to the side. My name is Stephanie. I'm a consultant and also the grant manager for Vernon K. Griebel Foundation. Helen Griebel, which you saw in the video, is the president of that foundation. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce our panel here, and I'm going to moderate some questions, then open it up to question and answer as well. So I'll start down with Laura Carno. She's the founder of I Am Created Equal, as well as founder of Coloradans for Civil Liberties and working on FASTER, firearm training for teachers. We'll talk a little bit more about that. And it's kind of taking off, which is exciting. And also the author of Government Merely Ruins Everything. And then we've got Brad Beck over here. Brad is the director of Yes International Color Marketing Company. He's also the founder of Liberty Toastmasters, which has a couple organizations here in Colorado. Lifetime member of the Optimist Club, too. And we have Rick Fernandez. He's the director of product management for CSG International, a computer software company. He's the former chair of Broomfield County Republicans, and he's also running for Broomfield City Council. That's exciting. And we have Ellie Reynolds. Ellie works for the largest political consulting firm in the West. She specializes in center-right issues and campaigns. She's also the executive director of Metro Energy, as well as president of Denver Metro Young Republicans. And she's been featured on over 160 media networks, including Fox News. So that is our highly esteemed panel. I think my favorite thing is leadership over the Rockies. So slide that one in there. I'll go and open it up with, what are you guys doing today as an active, engaged citizen? What motivates you to continue to kind of keep up this fight?
We can kind of jump around on this one, but for me, I do it for a living, but I was just lucky enough to be able to pursue something that I was passionate about and be able to do that every day. And the majority of the work that I do is outreach and coalition building. So if you ever want to get involved with anything, I would love your support. I can bring you letters and whatever else you need. But I think that's what keeps me going, is the constant changing climate and the new challenges, and just working with people.
Well, for me, it's really my family and my daughter. My daughter's actually at that age of being able to really start to make a living for herself and then kind of live her life and move forward on that. And you look around it and say that she can have the same opportunities that I did as I was growing up, as she can have the same opportunities to make those personal choices. And really what it comes down to is, you look around and see at every single turn force being used in a lot of ways to dictate how we can make our decisions or limit those decisions. So it's a matter of saying, well, who's going to stand up against that onslaught? And it really comes down to saying, I can't necessarily sit back and let it happen and complain about it. I've got to get involved and actually be part of in our end, the push back for freedom. So that's really where I stayed involved over the last several years.
So one of the things I've done since 2009, I went through the leadership program, the Rockies, and what was really interesting is you had some pretty incredible leaders in that 9-month program, but every time they were asked a public policy question, they had a really hard time articulating the ideas and principles of liberty and freedom to their sphere of influence. So I went to the executive director, Sherry Williams, and said, why don't we start a Toastmaster group based on the themes of individual rights, free markets, limited government? And it was an interesting proposition because, said Brad, we tried that once and it really didn't work. Of course, Shari laid down the gauntlet for me to walk over, and I did. And since 2009, we've started 4 different clubs around Colorado based on the themes of liberty, where people come in and practice oral communication and leadership skill development using the classic structure of Toastmasters with the timeless principles of leaders in action. We had a club originally, the first one was in Aurora. We've moved that now downtown Denver. That meets on the 1st and 3rd Saturday of the month down at the Independence Institute. We've got a club in Longmont, we have a club in Grand Junction, and one in Colorado Springs. And what we really help people do is be able, one, to speak in public, so there's not that fear, with prepared speeches, but also speaking extemporaneously. And then everything we do gets evaluated and timed. And what's brilliant is you see people who have great minds get very comfortable in their own skin being able to talk one-on-one or to large crowds. So that's one of the things that I'm doing for the citizenship initiative.
And I've met many of you before. I'm Laura Carno, and I was here with my book, Government Ruins Nearly Everything. So thank you for having me for that book event. If we're saying that government ruins nearly everything and we shouldn't turn our big problems over to government, then we better be willing to do something to actually fix the problems. And I'll just throw out the latest thing that I've been involved in. There's a training program for school staff members who are armed first responders in their schools. It is legal here in Colorado with the permission of your district to carry a firearm to protect children if God forbid something happens. I went to a class in Ohio about 11 months ago, determined to bring that back here. And as there's probably a similarity with all of us here on this panel, we all think that if we want to do something, we should just go do it. And even when it takes a lot of work. And we had our first class last week, and it was a big success. Media was very curious about it. But I look at that and I say, can government protect school children from shootings? No, but these 17 people who got trained last week can do that. So it is up to us to look at the big problems, and instead of saying, I know libertarian groups always get this, instead of saying the government should go fix this, we have to be willing to say, we will fix this.
Perfect. In today's political climate, when you see such heated rhetoric and hot button issues, how do you even approach the issue of citizenship and saying that it does?
Let me just say real quick, my favorite question when we go here, why should I be involved? My favorite question is, who knows better the decisions you should make in your life? You, let's just say for your school, who knows better what curriculum is best for your kids? The teachers at your kids' school, or bureaucrats in Washington, D.C., thousands of miles away who have never met your kid. Most people, even non-political people, know that they have that information because it's their kid. Of course they know better than some bureaucrat in D.C. that's never met their kid. So it's a very simple question that I use to kind of take it out of the heated rhetoric and engage people.
I think something we can do to be more engaged when it comes, what we're seeing happening now are people getting up in arms and saying, I'm going to do something, so I'm going to go protest for no reason, or I'm going to do something, so I'm going to post about it on Facebook. But they're not connecting the dots on real change and how to get there versus just having a protest to protest something. And so I think when we talk about the rhetoric today, we also have to connect those dots of how we can civically engage, but also be mindful of the best actions to get there.
Well, I can give you some real immediate examples here. Running for city council is an interesting position to be in, so you can say I'm going to the dark side a little bit, but believe me, it's an infiltration on my part more than anything. What it comes down to, and as you talk to your neighbors and you talk to friends, it's a case where you have to lay out, what are you willing to give up? If you're willing to give control over the government, if you're willing to say, I'm going to limit an activity in your community, what are you willing to give up as a result of that? Are you willing to say, I would support the idea of let's put in bike lanes and let's put in those types of municipal type of transportation options? I look at those folks and say, well, if you've got two kids and it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you got to get one of your kids over to soccer practice and the other one over to ballet. Do you really want the government dictating to you how you can actually make that happen? And these are real conversations that are happening, and it's a matter of just pointing that out and saying, you either can give up that choice or you can make that choice for you. So it's really trying to juxtapose, again, that pressure coming from a government entity as opposed to letting those decisions be made by those families or by you as an individual.
I was going to share one of the things that I do. I'm quite active with the Boulder County Republicans, and we do a lot of tabling in the community, engaging the community. And so one of the things I love doing is working our table, and we'll have this set up. You've probably seen it before, the world's smallest political quiz. And we'll engage people by saying, as they're walking down the lane, are you politically homeless? And they always kind of stop and, what do you mean homeless? Say, no, do you have a political philosophy? And we'll engage them in 5 personal questions, 5 economic questions, put a little dot, where do they land, and then we have a discussion with them. And they tend to be more liberty-oriented. We'll continue that conversation and ask them if they're interested in engaging with us or getting our newsletter. And what's really interesting is we define who we are, because we're meeting the public, and you get those haters every once in a while. But, you know, we say, bless your heart, move them along. But it's amazing how many people thank us for being there, because there's a lot of closet conservatives, Republicans, libertarians in Boulder County who will not come out for fear of the retribution, either for their business or they just don't want people to know. But we get a lot of thumbs up, a lot of people talking to us and saying thank you for being there. And so that's one way that I try to at least say, hey, there's especially in Boulder County, you know, I've often said there's being a Republican in Boulder is like being a ham sandwich at a bar mitzvah. It's kind of rare. There's over 39,000 of us, and we make a difference in the county because what happens here in Boulder can really change what happens in the state. So we get the base out, we work with our friends in the Libertarian Party, the Independents, we can make a difference here in Colorado.
That's why I wear my hat.
There you go.
This is a question for Laura. Do you have a specific example of when the government has gone too far, since you've written a book about it? And then how do you go about keeping the government in check?
Yeah, and I attended a school board meeting last night, so let me just stay on the school topic for a minute. I attended a school board meeting. A friend is starting a charter school, and this is down in Colorado Springs. And most places throughout the country, we think that the school system, generally speaking, has gone too far in curriculum that only teaches to the test but keeps failing students. Kids that can't graduate high school or need remedial help for math before they can even start in college. So there's a broad agreement that government education fails kids. And it's so interesting to see somebody saying, I'll work within this public system, but we need to do some things different for starting a charter school. And the scowls on the face of some of the school board members who they just want to keep control over the status quo, and they don't really want something different. Even though when you look at out of the top 10 public schools in the state, 8 of them are charter schools. So something good is going on there. So I like to look at that sort of free market experimentation to allow people to pick, allow people choice where they're going to send their kids to school.
Rick, I know you kind of hit on it already, but you've decided to run for city council. How you're being moment of weakness, yes, an active and engaged citizen. What made you? What was kind of the tipping point that made you decide to jump in and pursue that?
So I'll relate it. Another experience I just had here recently. So I live in Broomfield County, just down the road, and we have city council meetings about 3 times a month. So I was at our latest one on Tuesday. And the thing that struck me, and it kind of reinforced why I'm doing this, the way that I see government being leveraged or being asked to be leveraged even at a local level, it's coming down to how do you apply force through government to drive an agenda. And it can be everything from oil and gas development. We're having a huge fight over oil and gas development in Broomfield. In fact, when I'm hearing, I'm just beside myself listening to this. As an example, there's the operator in Broomfield who's working very closely with the city, has made a decision to move a number of their wells into Erie, into Weld County. We have citizens now showing up demanding that the city council protest what another municipality and what another county is deciding to do. Guys, that's not what we're there for. That's not what government is there for. So my concern, the reason I'm getting into this particular race is to say this is not the proper role of government. Like Laura said in the video, this far and no further. We have to be willing to make that stand. We have to be willing to take that direction and be convicted by that and being willing to stand up for it. And the other thing that I've noticed, just really quickly, on the conservative side, for lack of a better term, is this, especially in our community, is this notion of, well, I don't want to get involved, I don't want to stick my head up, I want to kind of lay low, and I think that's out of fear based on what's happening with the other side of this agenda. It's about bullying, it's about really getting in people's faces, and and basically pushing them to a point of fear of not getting involved. And I'm not going to stand by and let that happen. So even if it's a small race within my community, making sure we do have people involved in government that are going to basically take a stand towards these things, that's really the reason I've gotten into this latest fight.
Can you tell them what your billboard said when you were the party chair?
Oh, sure. Now, Brad's going to say we ripped off on it, but I don't know.
We were first of all.
We can steal good ideas.
So we had 4x8s, and we ran through this when I was county chair of Broomfield Republicans for the last 4 years. We came up with a saying that basically said, freedom is the only tent big enough for everyone. 4x8 signs, blue signs all over Broomfield. And the interesting thing is, the last election, we had about 4 of those things destroyed right around election day. I mean, utility knives through them, the whole thing. And it was interesting to take that as a message and then say, what's the problem here, guys? What's so fearful, or what's so intimidating about freedom? So putting that message out there, you start to kind of get the long knives out against you, but we gotta stand up for it.
Now, Brad, you've kind of taken a different avenue, not running for office, but still very active and involved in your community. What are other ways people can get involved? And why does it matter to get off your couch and do something?
It's a great question, Stephanie. I think I'm preaching to the choir, but if we're not self-reliant and self-assertive and really take the bull by the horns in our own local area. One example, I live in Erie, which is slowly becoming the People's Republic to Boulder. And there's the Boulder County side, which I live on, so I'm 2 blocks from the county line, and I actually can see freedom from my house. But on the Weld side, they're very open and encouraging about energy development. And so one day the town was voting on a moratorium, and I showed up with a couple other folks, and we spoke in favor of oil and gas. After all, I like a cold beer, and I like to have a warm house in the winter. And we spoke in favor of this energy development in our community. And as I was holding up the petitions, the Boulder Daily Camera photographer took a picture of me. And the next day I was on the front page of the Daily Camera, above the poll, above Jared Polis and above the Pope that day, which is kind of scary because when you're driving down the road and you see yourself in the Daily Camera news box, you can kind of freak out. Plus, my boss had put it on my desk, like, what's this, dude? But my point being this, if we don't do something locally, we're not going to change things. And too often, we don't write a letter to the editor and say, hey, here's an opposing opinion. But we don't talk to our friends and neighbors. I'll put out, the signs for the candidates who are running for office, and I'm amazed at how many neighbors will come up to me and say, I'm voting for all those folks because you are, which is scary. Because one, it's trust on their part for me, but they're not making their own informed decisions. And I always say, look, I may be crazy. Why don't you just, here's some information on all these people or this particular petition. You should be informed as well. But we've got a problem with laziness and apathy in our communities, and I think one locally and then in the state, we can make a difference. Washington, I don't know. But here, I think, if we have an opposing view and people say, they'll speak their mind, our legislators will listen because we shop in the same places and we work in the same community. And I think that's a huge aspect of having balance in the discussion. So that'd be my response.
Always a question for you. I know everyone is always so curious how to get young people, millennials, involved. And when you hear kind of the Bernie phenomenon, offering free college, free healthcare, how do you even approach the subject of citizenship and why it matters?
Well, I am a millennial, so for me, I mean, this is just me talking amongst my peers and what I've kind of noticed, as well as what we've done at the Denver Metro Young Republicans and how we've kind of changed things. The first thing is that I think first you have to be open to talking to people, and what we've done for our Young Republicans group, which we have grown our membership, I don't know, tenfold since we started doing this. was being able to go to venues where they weren't typically conservative hosts or Republican hosts, or they weren't Republican friendly, and having kind of like an open door policy and having different conversations, and not just having one candidate come speak all the time about how you needed to get out and vote, but also talking more about the deeper issues of what makes someone a Republican. And we've gotten really good response to that. But how we've also gotten that is because we are empathetic and we understand the issues that millennials are going through. And I mean, for me, I constantly deal with this with other Republicans. I feel like I'm battling over student loans about, because something that I've been really passionate about is people understanding that the student loan burden that millennials do have now, and people not writing articles about how we can't afford housing because of avocado toast, and that's definitely not a correct correlation. And just talking to people about some good solutions, and everyone realizes when you sit down and you say that there is a problem with student loans and the price of college, they realize that those problems stem from government. What happened was student loans became controlled by the government and rates increased it. Schools then became state institutions, rates went up, and they started making money off of young people, and now they're in a situation they can't get away from it, and their only option is to turn back to the government. So that's been a really good way for us to engage people, is realizing, like Laura's book says, government nearly ruins everything, and this is just one of the things that you're dealing with.
I always like to end it, this will be new for Laura, a fun little question, and I want to open it up to questions for you guys, and a twist to this, so you guys can't answer the same. If you could go to dinner with any political figure, dead or alive, who would you go to dinner with?
Don't start with me. You can start.
I'm gonna go with Abraham Lincoln right now. Did the impossible, and took the words of our founders that all men are created equal, and within a century ended with slave trade. I think we can all be proud about that, isn't it?
I had dinner with Jefferson and Hamilton, especially after they had a Madeira or two, and pretty engaging to listen to. So I think they're pretty good company.
I'll stick with the founding fathers for a minute. For me, it'd probably be George Washington, because of the fact that he was reluctant to serve, but he did serve. But he also realized as he got towards the end of his term, either as the commander of the Continental Army or even as president, that resting power in one person is not appropriate. So his willingness to say, I'm giving up the mantle of that power, set a great example. I wish we would have stuck with it a little bit longer, but that's what I would say.
I would also say the founding fathers, and you guys all stole them by the time they got to me. But you can, I think we, the five of us, are very similar, and we're all cut from a very similar cloth. So I understand how that could happen, and I think we all genuinely have, as nerdy as it sounds, a love for our Declaration first and foremost, and our Constitution, and so I think we would all just love to pick those brains and figure out how we could model our society today very similar.
I also want to make a quick point. I just saw Marcus back there come in. Vernon K. Kriebel Foundation sponsors an Unsung Hero Award, and this year we partnered with Turning Point USA, and Marcus that he's doing down and he could speak a little bit more about it. He kind of helped ending free speech zones.
Well,
I'd like to open it up to any questions that you guys might have.
I have 3 questions. I don't know if the chair will let me, it will indulge me in all 3 of these questions, but go for it. Moderator? Okay. Go for it. First one for Rick.
Identify yourself, young man.
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Chris Cole, or sometimes I'm affectionately known here as Steve. I don't know if any of you guys know. It's been a little while since I've come, but...
Chris, can I ask you to stand, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So first question is for Rick, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I'm wondering how oil and gas is going, like, on the public level in Broomfield. Like, what's the sentiment that you're feeling from your constituents or your potential constituents?
Sure.
Both from a Republican and kind of like an independent side.
Right. Well, okay, so I'm going to take the political angle out of this in terms of the party affiliation, because I don't think it's necessarily a partisan issue. The way I would describe it is there is a very vocal constituent group within Broomfield that have a reasonable concern about things happening close to their homes, which I think if I was living in those areas, I would be concerned as well. What I'm seeing happen, though, is that group is, again, taking it to a level where threatening to recall worked within our city for our mayor pro tem, as an example, for 12 years. Not that I agree with everything that he decided, but he's been a good steward of what we need to do as a community. The outcry coming from this group is largely shut everything down, take away property rights, and I'm running really on individual rights and property rights as a cornerstone to what I want to make sure we defend. And going back and forth with a few people, even on council on this, is they don't care. I mean, it's such a loud outcry that they are looking to make an example of our community. What I think is dangerous with that is that what I mentioned before, we have a number of people that I talk to that are normally pretty engaged that are just laying low. They just don't want to put their neck out, and I think that speaks very poorly of us as a community. That one, it's happening, and two, we don't have the wherewithal or the courage or whatever else you want to say to actually stand up and say, no, this is not right. So what I'm trying to do as far as me running is to make that voice, that alternate voice, be heard. Because if we don't step up and say property rights matter, individual rights matter, the point of, yeah, we understand your concerns, but if you take away an oil and gas company's right to exercise their surface access points or work through their mineral rights under the ground, that's no better than you making the claim that they're taking your rights away on the other side. So you have to point these things out, and I think the other part of this becomes listening to what those concerns are, but also what I was saying before. What are you willing to give up? And making that statement. And it's a reasonable type of a question that does put the decisions back in the hands of the citizens that are wrestling with this idea. And I think it also is starting to set up a very extreme type of a positioning for the groups that are really pushing back and trying to stop everything altogether. So watch it closely, because it's happening in Broomfield. It's going to happen elsewhere if we're not careful.
Well, if nobody else has another question, I'll start. I'll let someone else go.
Yeah, I wanted to ask Ellie on the student loan thing. My little pet peeve is slavery, and once you're...
I have a pet peeve over slavery, too.
Once you're in debt on a student loan, you can't discharge it through bankruptcy, so you're stuck being a slave.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think you can sign yourself into slavery. So I've been trying to pitch that it does not necessarily need to be easy to get out of it, but you ought to be able to at least declare bankruptcy and get out of it with all the regular stuff that goes with bankruptcy.
It's a loan you willingly assumed. How can you call that slavery when you willingly agreed to assume that?
I willingly agree to be your slave for the rest of my life. Okay? We're done. I'm your slave. Oops. I've changed my mind. Does that make me still be your slave? You cannot take away the right of freedom. A slave contract is not an enforceable contract. The slave always can choose to not be a slave anymore.
Well, we borrowed a lot of money to buy our house. Were we enslaved by our mortgage? Can we just nullify the contract?
Yes, you can go bankrupt. You can give your house back. You can go bankrupt and start over.
Well, you know that millions of students would simply get 10 years of higher education and then all declare bankruptcy. That's just what people, that's what you're
might be
incentivizing.
true, but you're saying that it's better to, who is, how are you going to keep them on the farm if they can be free? It's you're an argument that we can't get rid of slavery because too many people would choose freedom.
Sounds like a Republican meeting.
So what you can do is you can defer student loans, essentially, hold them off, dependent on your income, where you are in life. And actually, one of my problems is everyone, older generations, believe that everyone's just deferring their student loans because they don't want to pay them back. And there is, with any system, especially any government system, there are abuses, right? But there are a lot of people who, I can just tell you from personal experience, I worked all throughout college. I worked 9 to 5 as a paralegal, and I went to school at night, and I still and that was just my student loans, not my housing, anything. I paid for all of that myself, all my books and all my living expenses. So when I got out, I had this, and everyone told me, even my parents really, because it was a different time when they went to school, and my parents were like, oh, it's fine, you'll get a great job and you'll make it back and it'll all be worth it. Well, the reality is that incomes have not gone up. So you have an overwhelmingly amount of the population who has bachelor's degrees for no reason. And I got out, I did get a job, I worked very hard, I think I make a pretty good amount of money for someone my age, and I still struggle. And I bought a home last year, so I'm not one of those people that can't buy a home, but it was hard. It was extremely hard because I pay over $1,000 a month in student loans, and I pay that same price on my mortgage. That is a lot of money. And so you just, I know you can just try and do the same thing, but either way, I think there is a process and there are abuses. I don't think calling it slavery is the answer. And for me, it's because that word, all of us just went, like it. And so I think for me, it's all about, when I work on different public policy issues or campaigns, it's all about softening the tone and understanding that people are happy, or at least feel like they made change. And I feel like that initially that would scare me away, and we might believe the same thing.
Thank you. Would you mind taking Mike's comment or question?
Oh, of course, yeah.
Well, as Laura wrote, this government is screwing up everything because they're the ones that are extending the loans with zero discrimination. They'll give a loan to anybody to study anything. Even gender studies, things that have no market value. That's why they're enslaving people.
Right, and that's what happened is they took over that process. Yeah. They took over student loans from private institutions.
If the loans were coming in the private sector, you wouldn't loan that money unless you were sure that person had potential to pay you back.
I agree. And I think that's what happened is that, well, I don't think that, I know that government took over the student loan process as well as a big chunk of higher ed here in the nation. And just look at Colorado, for example. You pretty much have to go to a state school because your other options you can't afford, and then you get into this bind too where a lot of they won't give you financial aid. The government doesn't give financial aid if you're middle class and up. Well, who's struggling is the middle class. That honestly, those are the people. My family have 3 small businesses, and I could not get a financial aid or scholarships or anything because you're in this, you don't deserve it because your family should help you even though they would go bankrupt helping you. It's a flawed system.
Yeah.
And so you have to come from the point, especially when you're talking to young people, if you want to talk to them about what's going on in the world and you want to talk to them about housing prices or you want to talk to them about healthcare, first you have to understand what their income looks like every month. It is different than your income. Their household is completely different. And so their priorities are different.
Yeah. Without all this government money, we just have no idea where all these students would be getting money for school. We can't conceive of where it would come from, but a lot of it would come from corporations. People like Google would be paying for people to study computer science. They'd have contracts that say, come work for us for the summer or work for us for a certain number of years after you graduate. There'd be a buyout clause, so the person wouldn't really be enslaved by that, you know. I mean, we can't conceive of what the market could come up with if government didn't extend this money.
And that's happening with master's degrees. We see that happening with a lot of people that get bachelor's degrees right out of college, but then they go and they work in the workforce a little bit. And then there does start to be some negotiation within their field or their companies about getting, you know, another degree and what that cost is. It's also a 2-year degree usually. It's a little less. There's already a little buy-in. Tested the person. You know, I mean, it's a system that's flawed, but that's happening with master's degrees because there's not as many of them.
I want to just throw one other thought out here as I'm listening to this. The thing that I keep coming back to as we're talking about this is abdicating the responsibility of the individual to make these choices. And I'll use my daughter as an example. She just graduated from CU 2 years ago. We made a decision early on to make sure that we had saved the money for her to go and go to school and those types of things. But we made it clear to her as we were going through this that we are making sure that we're going to have, through our own hard work and our own decisions, she's going to have the money she needs to go to school. But then it's on her to make the choice on what she's going to study, where she's going to go from there. And my fear, based on what I'm hearing here, is to your point, there's a lot of money flying around. I don't know if it's real or the access to that resource is there. And it's to a point where it's so easy on the surface to get to that resource if you're going to get a federal student loan or whatever it might be. That, are you feeling, I hate to say it, the pain of going through that investment to know and check yourself every so often, am I doing the right thing? And I worry that that's being lost in a lot of ways, because there is it's almost a faulty expectation. Hey, you need to go to school. Well, why? Why are we not talking to our kids about trade school? Why are we not talking to them about making a living as an electrician or a plumber? I have an uncle who's a master plumber, didn't go to school, but I can tell you, he's been able to take care of his family of 5 and done very, very well. And I just think
So I
there's
should have
this.
been a plumber, Rich.
You could. I don't know if you could do it now, but I'm just saying you could probably.
Right,
You,
that's not the
I'm
answer
sure you
for
could.
everybody.
I know, but what I'm saying is, looking into those options, I just think the default position is you got to go to college.
Yeah.
And I think that's
No
that's
good.
unfortunate.
Ridiculous
So.
for everybody to be herded in one direction.
Stephanie, we have a question from the table behind you. I will ask the person at the table behind you to state his question, and I would ask you to repeat the question for the
A recent study showed that 70% of faculty members voted Democratic, the other 30% were communists. School, my bachelor's cost $2,000, my master's cost $1,000. Things have changed dramatically. College costs have been inflating faster than anything else, and we need to question how are they structured. Many of them are state institutions. Many of them do a very poor job with education, and we should start with the tax code, which taxes each American at 52%. Doesn't matter if you're low income or high income, some form of taxation reaches you, and that really chills demand. If we had a full paycheck, we would be able to afford much more education. We would shop around and say, why are the buildings empty evenings, weekends, June, July, and August? And we would start with some reform. Education can be a profitable venture, but it tends to be not in keeping with the liberal establishment mindset. And so we want to change that, and we can have a very exciting time now that textbooks are being replaced with online access to information. And if we went with a free market school system, we would have a much better country.
I apologize. I realize that that's just too long. Yeah. We have another question from Yana here.
Sorry.
Laura.
Just want to make a quick comment about the student welfare, the question about it. Okay. I heard that Donald Trump at some point made a comment that he was proposing that the most students should have to pay is 12.5% of their salary for 12 years. So even if they have a lot more limited at that, I think it's a good idea because if we keep giving out that many loans, more citizens will get motivated to protest because otherwise it's on us, the taxpayers, and if we don't give out that many student loans anymore, then the prices will come down. So I think that would be a really good idea. But as far as healthcare, I was wondering what you think is the role of the federal government in healthcare versus the local government? If you have any stories to support your positions, and how would you argue to the other side, like the Democrat would say Republicans would elect Republicans?
Sure. And I'll give the same answer to both of those, student loans and medical care. They both get worse when the government butts its nose in, and they get better when the market comes up with solutions. So I can see out there, if we didn't have all of the federal regulations, trade schools popping up that said we can train you to be a plumber or a whatever for some X small dollars, we'll loan it to you, you can pay it back on your first paycheck. Some smart entrepreneur could come up with things that we can't even conceive of, like you said, what the market can come up with. Let me just talk about medical care for a second. I have a friend on the Western Slope who is involved with a company called Appleton Clinics. And we've probably all heard about the concierge medical care where rich people can go pay a membership and they get their doctor every time. That's great. People can afford that. That's fine. What they've done on the Western Slope with Appleton Clinics is it's a membership. They don't take insurance. It's like your gym membership. And the doctor limits the number of patients he or she sees. They have a flat rate at something like $80 a month for a family of 4, and they wholesale drugs, wholesale prescription medications. So they're finding not only is it better for people like us, yeah, the law still makes us have insurance, but this gives people an opportunity to see the doctor when they want to see the doctor because there's no insurance, there's no HIPAA. So you can see a mole on your hand on a Saturday and text a picture of it to your doctor and say, should I freak out about this over the weekend? And the doctor says, no, come in Monday. It completely is changing the way people are getting their primary medication, not only for ordinary people like us who have a medication that is so expensive that keeps them alive. They can use their current welfare payments or other support payments to get an Appleton Clinics membership. The drug is cheap through that doctor because they're doing wholesale medications, and then they can actually get treated by a primary care physician. Now, Appleton Clinics and all these other practices like this came from ideas from the free market. It's because the government screwed it up that people said, wait, there's got to be a better way to do this. And doctors were can't stand how the government is making me treat my patients 5 minutes at a time when they actually need more time. So I'll give the same answer to both of us. I don't think government, and as I said last time I was with this group, I lean very libertarian even though I'm a registered R. I don't like the government butting into anything, especially education, medicine. It has disastrous results.
I'm sorry, Frank.
You mentioned leaning libertarian, even though being a registered R. So for each of us, do you find yourself facing a dilemma of voting between two parties you prefer, and would you vote for both if you could?
Is this an approval of voting?
I've been found out.
I don't know how we kind of made that.
I know.
It's
You're
me,
so
you
subtle
know.
about that.
Yeah, just a subtle question on that topic. We'll start with Laura and just move down to Stephanie.
Sure.
We actually have Chris. Chris is
Steve.
Yeah, the person who's not Steve. So, do you wish to respond to Frank? I'm sorry, Stephanie. I'm taking control here. I don't really want to. How do we want to?
This could be a lightning round. Sure, I'm open to it.
Okay, why don't you deal with the approval voting, and then
Yes,
we'll go to Chris.
Sure. No. Sure.
Wonderful. Thank you. The one thing I'd like to bring to the table, though, is as I bring it always back to the idea of freedom over force. And as active citizens, whether we're really engaged or our finger and say somebody oughta, which to me are dangerous words, somebody ought to do something about that, and it's a default to the government. We need to do it. And I don't know how many times I got, when I was the vice chair for the Boulder County Republicans, fingers pointed at me, and I always stood around and went, wait a minute, 1, 2, 3, coming back at you. That's a great idea. Why don't you do it? Well, I don't have time. Well, I'm sorry, neither do I, but I'm making time. I'm carving out time away from my family, away from other obligations. Why don't you? And that usually stops the conversation. So we get the government that we are invested in. And so I always
You're
share.
too defensive in your answer. You got to be more inviting.
I am, but I know.
Because when those things came up, and I did this as a county chair. Hey, I'm looking forward to seeing you the next time we're walking for candidate X. And have a nice day. And that usually completely shuts down. Or they, to some people's credit, they actually do show up. So.
And if they don't, I say bless the heart and move on to the next.
So the next person will be Chris, and then we're going to have the Chris, and then the anonymous person at that table, and then Heidi.
All right, Steve again. This question's for Brad, actually. Brad, we talked about apathy in the community. I was wondering, from a young person's perspective, it seems to me that there's a lot less apathy going on in our generation, and of course, some of that rise in activism, is social media activism, and that's, we can forget about that, but there is whether it's protesting or actual, campaign volunteerism and whatever else, and don't get me wrong, most of it's on the left, and we don't want to encourage it, but I'm seeing a rise in that. I'm wondering if you're noticing the same thing, and two, if you think it's a good thing, or if you think it's true, if apathy is really going away in our generation.
So that's a great question, Chris. And one thing I would say is, being a young person who's conservative today or libertarian is cool. Back when I was in college, back in the old days, it wasn't. But today I see a shift, and I think partly because of social media, because people are being exposed to ideas. When I was going to school, you didn't hear about the Austrian School of Economics. You didn't hear about the founders in the way we do today. When the Tea Party came out, I mean, I read so much that in college I wasn't exposed to it. Why? So I think today the young people have, one, the interest, two, they are being engaged. Some of us were around the 60s. I was little back then, but you saw the protests, you saw the riots. What did they really accomplish other than create chaos? I'm always for dialogue, and what I see now what happened recently with Milo at Berkeley and other places, shutting down free speech at the home of free speech. You say, this is a weird universe we're living in. So I think it brings to the forefront, especially with the new media. And people are saying, well, wait a minute, why? And I think if you start with the why, you have a dialogue. When you start with shutting down free speech and shutting down the opportunity to talk to people, whether you agree with them or not. I don't agree with half my family, but I still go to Thanksgiving dinner. We have a discussion. So I think there is better engagement now. I think it's just young people are so darn busy that are in college. They want to get more involved, but they don't have time. You know that from your own personal experience. So you carve out some time, but gosh, I wish, you guys probably wish you had more time to do these kinds of things. I never did it till I was much older. I wasn't exposed to it. I think it's a great opportunity now for young people to get involved in a way that there's so much going on, whether it's politics, public policy, economics, or just whatever their passion is. And so I think there is a certain segment that's apathetic, but more and more and more, I'm seeing people get involved in whatever their passion is.
I'm going to have to stop the recording just for 30 seconds. Stephanie. Thank you.
Guys are bad
Okay, we have.
Talking's hard. Thank you.
I'd like to issue
louder, Ken, because.
I'd like to issue the Boulder Courthouse, 6th and Canyon, July 28th. That's a Friday, 9 a.m. Larry Goodman is a citizen activist. He impaneled a grand jury, and he noted that many elected officials have sworn the oath of office but not posted the required bond. Without the bond, there is no contract with the people to follow. He is going to have charges against him thrown out if enough people are watching. And the Denver U.S. attorney, newly appointed under Donald Trump, has said he will pick up the charges, and if Colorado officials are delinquent in their obligations, they will be prosecuted.
I have a comment and a question. The comment is, I just came across this quote in my notebook, which I thought was sort of pertinent. It's by Buckminster Fuller, and it says, "You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, you have to build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete." And we're not going to get ahead by fighting the state and trying to reform them. You know, reforming healthcare. I mean, imagine if we tried to reform the current taxi system. The solution is build a new model. Somebody did. Uber, just a new model that exposes the old model for the overpriced racket that it has been all along. So that's the comment. And the question is, there was an older woman on there who talked about government, you know, fitting in a box. You can only do this much. But, you know, with 330 million people are never going to agree on how big that box is going to be. Doesn't that sort of condemn us to a perpetual civil war with people always wanting government to do more, other people always wanting government to do less? You know, the founding fathers drew that small box in the Constitution and said you can only do these enumerated, delegated powers. But look where it got us. Government's been growing like a cancer ever since. So you're never going to contain the government in a box. And people are always going to be fighting over the size of the box. How do you solve that?
I think that's one of the things we're all trying to do through dialogue, which is a long game proposition. We can take up arms and be like the Balkans, which I don't think is beneficial to anybody, or we can fight for what we believe in and hope enough people are persuaded to come our side. And through reason and through rational discussion, I think we can get there. But it's not going to happen overnight. I grew up in Southern California. Very liberal policies. You see where the state is now. You look at Illinois. You look at Massachusetts. I think people finally get to the point where there's so much pressure on them, either financially or just the freedoms of doing it. I mean, here in Boulder, there was such an outcry when they were going to ban ice cream at the pools during summer, and enough people in Boulder said, that's crazy. So I think people are starting to get that, you know what, leave me alone. Don't tread on it. It's my life. I own myself by right.
Yeah, well, we're making incremental gains,
Sure.
like with the ice cream, but at the same time, the people who fight for 15, they're making much bigger gains that take away the liberty.
And I think we just got to keep doing it, but on all levels. I mean, social media is a great outlet. Talk radio is a great outlet. I think people talking to their friends and neighbors, trying to understand, as Rick said, get involved. If they don't, you get what you get. And I think we've got to constantly push at it. The other side of it is, trying to be active. I don't think enough people are being active because they're afraid.
And going back to his Broomfield thing, just to elaborate on what had happened there. So I worked, my client was also in the area, so I was also very involved in that. And to your point of talking about, well, it happens at a larger, it happens up here, and how can we fix that out here? You have to focus on the smaller stuff first, because it will become a snowball effect and you will no longer have any voice. And to go back to what happened in Broomfield, there is an overwhelmingly, a huge population up there that does support oil and gas. And they did support the development, and the company itself had came in months before and talked to everyone about the development, had made everyone aware. and a group from your neck of the woods, Boulder, mom dived in and made it, and rallied up 10 people, and the 10 people took over. Because the hundreds of people that were there months before, when the fight showed up, they weren't there. Because they didn't want to. They wanted to stick their head in the sand and pretend it wasn't happening. And what happened was city council members who were in favor of oil and gas and had always been, Republicans who had always kind of favored oil and gas and private property rights, all of a sudden were just beside themselves, and they couldn't find their backbone. And they couldn't do it because they felt like they had no one there with them, even though it would have taken 5 more people showing up saying it's not just this group. And so stuff like that, if that hadn't happened and Rick wasn't able to get together an amazing coalition up in Broomfield, and they would have felt alone up there, it would have snowballed and there wouldn't be oil and gas in Broomfield. And that company would have gone out of business because they solely had put their entire stock in that area. They would have been out of business, the company would have been gone, people would have been out of jobs. Smaller impacts the larger impact. And I think we all do that on such a smaller level, so that you're making, and honestly, more substantial change than walking for a national presidential race or whatever that looks like.
And I think when government gets painful, people will change their behavior. And I know you guys have an upper line in Boulder that some other areas of the state don't have. But think about what happened. I do a lot of work in Second Amendment politics. Think of what happened in the gun rights community after the Pulse nightclub shooting, where the government disarmed everybody who walked into that nightclub because they have a law that says you can't even have a firearm where alcohol is served, even if you're not drinking. Alcohol is served there, you can't bring a firearm in there. The gay community, who is often more comfortable in the Democratic Party than in the Republican Party, all of a sudden went, hang on a second, this is life and death now. This isn't politics. And I think self-defense is becoming a much less partisan issue as you have the Pulse nightclub in San Bernardino and all the terror that's going on worldwide. People are saying, hang on a second, I should be the one who decides how I protect myself, not the government. And so I think when there is pain, it helps people really feel the impact of big government on them, and they say that this far and no further, you're not taking away my right to defend myself. So that's just a little example of how I look at people feeling pain in government and how it changes from a left-right spectrum to a force versus freedom spectrum. And I see people one by one changing. It's a big uphill slog, though.
And I'll add one more thing to this, because I think we all struggle with we want to have that debate with someone that is, in a lot of cases, they're as staunch and dug in on their position as we tend to be. The thing that I keep reminding myself as I'm talking publicly, as I'm talking with my neighbors, as I'm going to different functions and saying, this is why I want to represent you, is knowing that you do have a vocal group on either side that is engaged, and they're very much making that argument or having that debate. It's knowing that there are people around listening. And they may not be vocal, they may not be as staunch on what their position is. They may be struggling with that issue just as much as you are. But being able to ask questions and say, well, if we thought about it this way, if we went about it a different way, just to allow for that idea to percolate, it's amazing to see how those things do turn out at election time. It really does, because it's a matter of you don't know what that impact might be unless you try it. So sitting back and saying, well, I'm going to make my point and then I'm going to move on, it's being able to relate in a way to the folks that are listening, that you can call them the mushy middle or whatever you want to call them, but they are trying to discern where they want to be. They are listening. Now, if it's 100% or 90% coming from one direction, that's going to obviously rule the day, but it's being able to stand up and make a case, make a statement in a respectful way. These things people will shut down. and doing it in a way knowing that people are listening, I think it does have an impact. You may not be able to track it or trace it or understand it right then and there, but it does have an impact.
Jerry, Ralph, Chris, not Steve. Jerry, you're up.
Let me ask you a question that I've been asking myself recently. How many things where you're talking about the rights of individuals should be decided by majorities as opposed to appellate courts?
I love libertarians. Republicans aren't that deep in thinkers usually. I will always default to individuals making the decisions about the things that affect them. But you're asking a legislative versus judicial. I'll throw that out to people more schooled than that.
Well, the founders set up a system, and if it was followed, I think we would have some more clarity on what the right way, what the right path is to go. I mean, if the Congress did abdicate what their responsibility was to legislate, it goes now to a third party, which are regulatory agencies, right? And they adjudicate what happens. That's bass actors. I mean, the legislature should be making the laws, and
that's what I'm asking.
Yeah, they should be. Yet we have judges making interpretations of laws, and let me say, judges aren't infallible, and we've had terrible Supreme Court decisions in the past. So the system was set up based on historic knowledge, looking at what the Greeks, the Romans, the Persians, all those ancient cultures did, and they took the best of the best at the time that they were aware of. And we've evolved a little bit, but when we go back to those classic structures, I think we are better served as citizens. When you start playing around and you've acted as judges making laws, we have a problem. And I think that's when we as citizens say, stop. We better re-examine this. So I hope that answers my question.
Right, Benjamin Franklin said a republic if you can keep it, and we have not done a very good job keeping it.
I think what was going on at the time of our founders and the Constitution was we still lived under mostly common law developed outside of Parliament, and that was where the crucial decisions about our rights took place, in which powerful people, small people have a far better chance against the powerful people in the courts than they do when you're counting numbers and dollars. But I'm interested in other reactions too.
Well, I think somewhere along the way, and I think it's probably in the last 100 years, the way that the paradigm shifts has gone from what's the proper role of government, which is to protect individual rights, to allow for a system that allows those rights to be adjudicated and properly defended, as if you and I have a dispute, there's a court there to allow us to air that dispute and work through that. I think progressivism and the way that you look back to Woodrow Wilson and the impact he had on our country, the way that FDR turned that and codified that in to, instead of a right to action and a right to things, that shift has really, I think, it's manifested itself in the way that a lot of people do look at government. How do we turn that back? I don't know. But to your point, I think we need to re-examine exactly what the proper role of government is. And I don't think it is to grant things at the end of the day. Give me the ability to make decisions and then stay out of my way. That's the way it should be. But there's such a, I heard on the radio yesterday, 1 out of 4 people in Colorado is on Medicaid at this point. At what point do we say that's not right? And the difficulty is because the government has gotten to a point of providing things, promising things. It does become an overwhelming part of any decision someone will make on that. How do we turn that back? I don't know. I think it's a matter of it's like cutting the Gordian knot at a certain point. You know, we've got to just say we can't unwind this thing. We got to cut it and almost start at a much simpler place. But I don't know how we ultimately can get there without working through the ideas with our neighbors and our friends.
It's my turn, then Chris. My comment should be brief, which is that one of the things, I go to high schools and grade schools, and I talk to the kids about freedom. And I point out to them something that both they and their teachers and most people don't understand or realize, which is that right now we are an extraordinarily fortunate group of people because we are living in this tiny little bubble of freedom compared to the vast amount of human history where people lived under the rule of a central dictator and his goons. We live in this little bubble of freedom that's so precious. And I try and tell them, you need to be aware of this and you need to fight for this because it's easy for it to go away. And with that statement, let me move my camera over to Chris. So, Chris, stand up and do your thing.
All right, last question is for Laura, right? Well, I'm actually going to change my question because of something you said. No, it's great. It's great. So you mentioned like.
Right, I had the answer to the first question.
You probably did. No, I was actually going to ask what the title of your book was, so I'm sure you had that. No, but the question is, I'm wondering, you mentioned the pain that people have to kind of suffer in order to, you know, to go back to, you know, to liberty ideas, I guess. I'm seeing it the other way around. Particularly, I don't know if anybody here is familiar with like the Washington Monument Syndrome. Is that familiar to anybody?
Yeah.
So yeah, libertarians mostly, but maybe some Brads in the group too. But basically just you know, the government when facing tax cuts or people not voting to raise taxes, they pick the most valuable thing to the people and they take that away to try to you know, to try to incentivize more taxation. And that's like a knife in the side to a lot of people who they don't really know any better. They're just like, shoot, there goes my Washington Monument. Or in my school district's case, they started making us pay for our own buses 50 cents a ride to school. And I was like, yeah, there's other places you could cut. Like, that's the one place you choose. I learned that lesson at the age of like 15 when I started going to high school in the Douglas County. Thank goodness turns down almost every mill levy that they've ever been given. So thankful for that. But I'm just wondering, like, that seems to be happening all the time, and that's the government saying like, let's give the people some pain so that they can support the government a little more, and it happens with entitlements and things like that too. So I'm wondering what your answer would be to that.
Yeah, and first of all, thank you for asking the name of my book. I'm happy to say it. Government Ruins Nearly Everything, available on Amazon.com. So I live in a place where the citizens turned down a tax increase about probably 10 years ago, and the mayor said, fine, we're going to stop watering the parks and we're going to turn off the streetlights. They did exactly what you're saying. Somebody in the city council during that period of time said, we're going to bring the citizens to their knees. It is incumbent upon people like us to remind our government just who works for whom. They are not our overlords. They cannot lord over us. We are in charge of whether they have a job or don't have a job. And like Ellie was saying, it takes just a few people to show up and say those kinds of things to our politicians to say that's not okay. I think change happens. You mentioned Uber. People felt pain from the taxi system and nobody knew how to fix it. The market came in and dropped Uber on us and completely changed the taxi system. So I believe in the individual to fix this. I believe that when government takes its boot off of our neck, so to speak, and we keep more of our own money and we can do more of the things that we wish to do without the government having to give us permission, wonderful things happen because there's a free market. So the one thing that you're seeing when government says we're gonna bring the citizens to their knees, we need to say that is not okay. And we need to be able to say that professionally and loudly.
So really good follow-up question.
Sure.
I don't really do this. I feel like people don't see it that way, and that's kind of what I'm struggling with. Is people don't see it as we need to tell the government that kind of thing's not okay. They just look at their buses being taxed or whatever you call it, and water being shut off in the parks and things like that. They just look at. They don't see through that, I guess.
Sure.
So how?
So in your for the youngsters among us, you don't want to be told what to do by your parents. You don't want to, when you get your first job, you don't want to be told what to do by your boss. Your generation gets not being told what to do. To me, it's a simple translation, and use the Uber example with your friends. To me, it's a simple translation. Do you want that guy living in Washington, D.C. making this decision for you, or do you want to make it yourself? Because everything really comes down to that.
Right.
It might be D.C., it might be Denver, it might be Boulder. Do you want that guy, that gal making the decision for you, or do you want to make it yourself? And your generation gets that, so I'm putting that on your shoulders personally. Because you have asked the question. You're now in charge of your generation, and ask them that question. Almost everybody in your generation, Ellie and Steph's generation, get that. They don't want to be bossed around.
The other thing I'll throw in there real quickly is, when I'm talking with folks your age and my kids, I always run them through a grid. Who pays, who decides, who benefits, and what's fair. And you do it with your city council. I love doing it with them, because basically I'm saying, look, I'm paying for this. You're saying this special interest is benefiting, right? But you may be abdicating it to a third party, and I have no say in getting rid of them. How's that fair? And that's a very simple way. I think Friedman came up with that, and I kind of adapted it. But it's just a grid that you can run anybody through on any issue. And what happens is, all of a sudden, they're thinking about the issue in a way that affects them. And I think that's a great way, just very simply, because it doesn't have to be complicated. Who pays, who benefits, who decides, and what's fair.
Anybody else? And I'm sorry. And we have Brian. Loudly, Brian.
So, just want to get back to the student loan question. Since it was Penny mentioning of course, whether somebody could actually pay back the loan. And also, I think they come up with creative new models. They look at the venture capital model in the world of companies, where some companies don't return much, but others return a lot to pay that back. And so it seems like you might have the same thing with student loans, where it's paid back as a fixed percentage of income. But if you make, say, below a certain amount, maybe you don't pay anything. And so, so some folks will pay back a lot, and some folks won't pay back much, because it sounds this fixed amount, which for some people could be too much for the life. They feel like they're in slavery, as you would say.
Although I would say so. About 2 or 3 years ago, I wasn't making where I am now, and I would get calls all the time. They'd be like, "Your student loans can be forgiven," this, and all these calls. And now I'm making more, and obviously I was paying that whole time, as I am now, but I also don't think that's not a very good model, because you don't want to encourage people not to continue to excel in their career and make more money. And so,
except they still continue to learn more, even if they're giving up a percentage of it. Even if that percentage is a lower to absolute amount, they're still earning more themselves.
Right, but
there's no disincentive to earn more.
Well, the only problem with that is the cap. The government. I mean, the problem is that you're allowing the government to then say, here's your cap, and then everyone would stay underneath 40,000 because.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Well, you know what the government would call. I'm suspecting this isn't done because the government probably is various rules that discourage this sort of model from being used.
Right.
So, and then I also wanted to say, just kind of in terms of the social media thing, that I think it's more, the internet in general, that makes people aware of things like blockchain economics and so forth. But social media actually tends to, right now, be more polarized, and people tend to wind up seeing only things from their little filter bubble, as they call it. And if anything, it silences the moderate middle, which is where progress happens because people are afraid to speak up, probably because they're encouraged to use their real name on Facebook. And that sort of stuff will hopefully begin changing in the next year.
Well, and they might be quiet on social media, but they're listening to us. And so I think it's incumbent upon people like us who understand liberty and who understand that everybody does better under liberty to put those arguments out there in a way that people can hear and not that angry, screamy stuff that people tune out.
Yeah, but unfortunately that's the current social media mechanisms tend to encourage that.
Sure, understood.
Start screaming, and the moderate middle that is reasonable and post-reasonable arguments against this shit out. But hopefully next year that'll start changing. But
I'm going to jump in, and then Chris is after me. So, sort of a side story. Carol Burnett. I assume everybody here knows about her. When she was very early in her career, she wanted to go to get her start as a comedian, as an actress. And so she made a deal with a sponsor. And that sponsor, she said to that sponsor, I will give you 10% of my income for the rest of my life if you give me a loan to go to school or whatever it was. And they did that contract, and he did very well. So this goes to the heart of local information. Local school control is the best school control. Parental control of homeschooling is the best kind of schooling. So this is yet another argument for getting government out of these decisions and letting Carol Burnett's. Chris, please stand.
Small comment, this is not really a question. Don't think I need to stand. I was just going to say a quote from Tom Woods. He always says it takes an hour to break down, all the on Facebook. So I think that's our uphill battle with social media and the younger generation. So
that is true. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak? And not seeing any hands, you guys can wrap up, or you can get a round of applause. Your choice.
I also want to say Brad can model the little kit there. We have Freedom Kits. Helen in that video has produced these kits. There's a whole bunch of good stuff
So
in there.
every one of you will receive, if you like, a Constitution and Declaration. What's unique about this is it's in modern vernacular, so they didn't change it. It just wording is slightly different, so young people can get it.
So this is the King James Version?
Yes, exactly. Or as we say, the Torah. Here is the video that you can watch and then share with friends and family. We encourage you to pass it along. How many of you bought a car in your life? You get an owner's manual, right? This is an owner's manual for citizenship, written just as if you bought a new car, and it's fabulous. Neat little bookmark. Helen's little Liberty Minutes that you can listen to, her top 10. They're a minute each. And then all kinds of other information and perspective on various topics, all based on citizenship. Thank you. That's in this. As well as a lovely little pin that says Lens of Liberty that I wear when I travel for business and I'm on a plane and people say, what's that all about? And I get a chance to talk to them about citizenship in this program. So if you choose, we'd love to have you have one of those or two and share them with friends and family and make sure we have that discussion about all the questions you've had today. What is citizenship and how can I get involved?
And these are underwritten by the
Regal
yeah, they're all underwritten by the Regal Foundation, so these are your gift from them.
I do have a sort of a strategic question for you, which is, this is a terrible name for the program, especially these days. I mean, we shouldn't be talking about citizenship because what we're likely to hear about is, oh, you don't believe in aliens or whatever it is. Do you have a different name that you guys have thought about?
No. This is the name of the program. It's Lens of Liberty through the Grievel Foundation and Citizenship Program. That's what the video's on. I think we need to define the words and own the words and then take them out in the community. So often the opposition defines things. And
well, the opposition absconded with the word liberal.
Right.
And so
I say
we've
I'm a
been
classical liberal all the time, and people say, I thought you were conservative. You know, great discussion point. So.
A sexy word, so it's good for us. We initially come in and everyone thinks we're going to be talking about immigration in some other form, and that's always the first question is like, didn't you say citizenship, or are we talking about borders? And we're like, no, we're talking about what it means to exercise your own citizenship. So it's a good talking point for us.
The responsibilities of citizenship is a possibility for renaming. I don't want to beat this horse because this horse seems to be dying.
Let's just say the people that are funding this are very fond of it, so we're going to keep it.
Well, if they're funding it, they get to name it.
Yeah.
So it is with that, as the chair of the Libertarian Party, I want to say thank you so much for your participation, for this wonderful, what I hope will be a recording that goes up on YouTube. You guys did great, and I think you deserve a huge round of applause. And with that, I'm going to stop the recording, and you can then yell at these people.